Welcome to Farm Here Daily, a field forward podcast. I'm your host, David Geiger. Today on Farm Here Daily, we go over a hot topic. We talk about heat illness, what it is, how it works, and prevention measures with Landus medical consultant Dr. Cari Croghan for Wellness Wednesday. Please be sure to like and follow the podcast as well as our social media at Field Forward Pod. We would love to have you join our community, keeping folks informed about what is affecting our farmers. This is Farm Here Daily. And joining me on Farm Here Daily, we have Dr. Cari Croghan for Wellness Wednesday. She is the Landus medical consultant. Dr. Cari, so glad to have you back. We spoke a couple weeks ago. How are you doing? How's things? And how are the Wellness Wednesday activities going on this week?
Oh, I think it's so much fun. I love doing the educational part of this, especially when it comes to farmers in Iowa, because my family's from there and they were farmers. They are farmers. So yeah, I love imparting information, having these fun back and forths to get some good education out there for you guys.
Absolutely. And I was telling you a little bit before the interview here that I learned a lot from a couple weeks ago when we were talking about the sun and protecting yourself from the sun and how farmers can do the same. And I wanted to move on to the next topic, which is this week's Wellness Wednesday conversation, which is heat illness and how to prevent it, how to work with it, how to avoid it, what to do about heat illness. So, from a doctor's perspective, could you just tell me what heat illness is? Because to me, it can mean a lot of things.
Yeah, absolutely. So when we think of heat illness, we're thinking about how your actual organ systems are not functioning properly because of heat exposure. So this isn't just like, oh, it's a little warm today and I need a fan and I'm feeling a little bit, hot and sweaty and I don't like how much I'm glistening or whatnot. This is actually your body's central nervous system and organs having dysfunction because of the exposure to heat and the fact that you're not able to dissipate that properly so that everything is happy inside.
The immediate thing I think of when you said that was dehydration and how it's more than just feeling thirsty. It's your brain can be dehydrated, your organs can be dehydrated, your skin can be dehydrated. So I want to cover dehydration, but first, before we get into that, are there other major things that you think of when you talk heat illness?
Well, as an emergency physician, when we see people, we're talking about heat exhaustion and heat stroke. And that's kind of extrapolated from being thirsty and dehydrated to I'm a die. And so
Yeah, yeah.
once you start feeling dehydrated, you're kind of already behind the eight ball, and you need to be taking really quick and aggressive measures to avoid heat exhaustion, heat stroke. And a lot of people don't, they think heat exhaustion is worse, but would you rather be exhausted or have a stroke? That's kind of how I think of it. So you'd rather just be exhausted. You can come back from that, right? Heat stroke is you need to call 911 and get your butt into the hospital immediately because you're actually having multi-system organ failure.
Right. So we can cover dehydration then as a broader topic as well. But let's go on the heat stroke there because that one seems the most important and pressing. What are the initial signs of heat stroke? What do you see first that would even allow you to have that decision-making ability to call the hospital?
So when you were talking about your brain is dehydrated, that's probably what the people around you are going to notice. Or maybe you will too, because it's confusion. It's like, I can't really think straight. I'm fumbling, I'm stumbling. If you're operating equipment that you've operated for weeks, months, years, you can't quite do it right, fine motor control, things like that. Your speech might be a little bit slurred. You might feel like you're going to faint or you might pass out. Your skin tends to be really hot because your core temperature is actually above 103. And so if you have ever experienced the flu or something like that where you've had a really bad fever, that's what you're doing, except it's way worse because it's not a fever under good circumstances. It's a fever due to external circumstances, not your body actually heating itself. Um, so you tend to have hot skin. It may be wet, like you're sweating your butt off, or it may be dry. And if it's dry, you are in definitely huge um, danger at that point, because that means that your mechanism to try to cool yourself, which is sweating for evaporation, is no longer working. If someone takes your pulse, it's probably going to be a good 120, 130. But definitely the mental status changes are what most people are looking for. And at that point, someone calls 911, someone else or whoever's calling 911 after that starts aggressive cooling. So we're talking ice bath, ice plunge. Um, and you want to continuously douse and get like the neck, the groin, the armpits. If you can get ice water and a fan because you don't have something to immerse yourself in, that also works. But you definitely need to have a chaperone because you don't want to immerse yourself when you're confused because you might drown.
You said 103 degrees as kind of that danger spot. We all know that part of the body's defense mechanism is heating yourself up to kill off viruses, bacteria. But is 103 the point at which your blood cells start taking damage?
Well, so here's the thing. If your body is heating itself as a protective mechanism, like you said, to fight off infection, that's one thing because your thermostat, which is inside your brain, is in charge of that. If you are being externally heated, your thermostat doesn't have any control over that. And that's when it gets dangerous because there's no internal regulation for that anymore. It's the sun and the humidity. Humidity is actually one of the worst things that can happen if you're hot. Um, the mechanism for us to cool ourselves is evaporation. And so that's why you sweat, eyes, eyelids, etc.
Yeah.
And what you're banking on is that the environment around you is going to cool you off and evaporate that water off of you. That's the whole cooling mechanism. And so if it's really humid, the environment around you is not going to get that sweat dried. That's the mechanism. And so the humidity actually causes a much worse problem. You can have lower temperatures, ambient temperatures, but if the humidity is really high in the 80s and 90s, you're at much further risk of um, having heat illness and heat injury at that time.
The reason why I ask that is because, at least for me, and this may not be other folks, but for me, when I understand how something functions a little bit better, I am able to be more self aware about what I'm doing, where I'm doing it, and how I'm feeling. Because sometimes those feelings will be a little bit, I guess, confusing. I haven't felt this way. I'll just push through it. You know, because we have that
Mhm.
as like a medical part of, you know, when we deal with new things. We're just like, should I freak out or should I just keep going and it'll go away? And so
Right.
just to in that line of thinking, could you tell us how the body does cool itself off? Is it just sweating, as you said, or are there other mechanisms that allow your body that without those you are going to heat up even worse?
Well, actually, that goes back to dehydration where we started. And so, if you are able to have a good volume status in your blood system, think of that as your reservoir for life. You've got to be able to have enough blood volume to circulate those red blood cells, get all of the oxygen and nutrients to all of your organs that you need to function, correct? So, with the cooling mechanism, you need to have a full reservoir because you're going to start shunting your blood away from your brain, your heart, your kidneys, and your lungs, the stuff that's really in the center of your core, to the outside so that you're able to cool. I mean, you do the same thing in refrigeration and plumbing, right? So you've got to have a reservoir that's full in order to do that safely. If you're super hot and you're shunting a bunch of your blood away from your internal core organs, they're going to start to fail. And so you're trying to get the blood to the outside so that it can cool, get that sweat out of there, and pick up cooler air on the outside and bring it into the center to cool off your core organs. So that's the mechanism that you're doing. If your reservoir is not full enough, then you start shunting that blood and there isn't enough left for the core, or your body realizes, oh, I need more blood for my heart and brain and my kidneys. And so I can't shunt it out. And so that's when the conundrum becomes you're dilating and constricting your blood vessels so much and erroneously because you're not able to evaporate that cool air off. And so the imbalance is what causes overheating.
Interesting. It as you're talking about that, my mind is envisioning a summer where my AC broke down, and I went down to the basement to see what was going on with the vent system, and there was a bunch of leaking, a bunch of water that I found, and there you go. There it was. It was leaking. It didn't have enough of the way ability to cool it. So the fans were just pushing more warm air. So that's what you're saying with blood cells is that you are essentially pushing forward the through your blood the no ability to cool itself without water.
Right. And I actually have a swamp cooler here, which I don't even think you could have in the Midwest. I'm in the desert, so it works fairly well here. But it relies on evaporation. That's why they were initially called evaporative coolers. So they um, push water, it's hooked to a hose, and they push water to these mats on the outside. And those mats are supposed to get wet, evaporate the heat from the house, and then that cools off the air that then drops down into the house, right? Well, it's been really humid around here lately because it's monsoon season for us. And so my house is a little bit like it's not acting like it usually does
Right.
because it's not able to cool off. So it's literally doing what our bodies do. Um, and you can tell it's just not nearly as effective when it's humid outside because you can't get that evaporative cooling going. And so those pads don't cool down. So then the air that's sucked back down into the house isn't nearly as cool as it should be. So the same thing happens with us.
You had that point about humidity as well, saying that that is much more dangerous. And I think that describes a little bit of that as well, because when you sweat, it's supposed to evaporate and therefore cool you off. And so
Hmm.
if you aren't having the evaporation, then you aren't cooling off quite as effectively. But at the same time, another thing I think of with humidity is that's kind of how our microwaves work or how we will thaw things sometimes is by immersing it in water or having water around you. And is there kind of a compounding effect, like a microwave effect, on humidity when you are out and about as a human?
Well, so there's a lot of different heating and cooling physics, essentially. We rely on evaporation, unless you're in a pool or a hot tub, and then you get conductive thermoregulation from the outside, like the you know, is getting into you, so you change your vasodilation and constriction to absorb some of that heat. And that's why when you're in a hot tub, you feel hot inside, and you might actually get, a little bit, get the vapors a little bit. Or if you're in a cool pool or immersive, then you're not relying on evaporation anymore. You're relying on conduction of that heat, and so you're able to shunt that heat from your core to the outside because you're getting cooling from the outside. So it works both ways. Our only natural mechanism is evaporative cooling, but you can definitely, especially with basically, you simulate sweating by cooling off your body with um, getting the skin wet and then putting fans on yourself. And so you're stimulating evaporation that's a lot more effective, actually. So if you're having heat exhaustion, then that's the way to do it. If you start feeling super sweaty, kind of a headache, dizziness, feeling just kind of weak and nauseated and blech, and you realize it's because you've been out in the heat too long, then the idea is to remove yourself from that and simulate sweating in a really effective way by wetting the body down, hopefully with cool water, and getting in front of a fan, which, if you think about it, is basically just evaporation at a higher scale.
Dr. Cari Croghan, this is Wellness Wednesday. We're talking about ways to prevent or treat heat illness.
Mhm.
And what you just said there really resonates with me. And so we're going to talk about ways to cool off. And naturally, that's going to be a big part of that is going to be drinking water. But I'm gonna start it off with a story that what you said made me think of. If you didn't know,
Oh
I
yeah.
actually lived in Brazil for 4 years. My family were missionaries down there,
Hmm.
so I lived there from about the age 13 to 17. And in Brazil, during that time frame where I lived there, air conditioning was extremely rare, and it was definitely not common in houses, and it was also very hot. Even though I lived in the southern part of Brazil, it was still extremely hot, very humid, very Texas, North Texas maybe style type temperatures. And when it got really hot and you couldn't open the windows because there's too many mosquitoes, the thing that I did to help was I would set a box fan next to my bed and I'd get a little spray bottle and I would spray my chest and have the fan go on, and that cooled me off to get to sleep, and then you sleep per normal. Is that a good experience to have, or could you tell me what is better, or what else you can do in that situation?
That's actually the best thing to do. If you're unable to, because you're not outside. If you're outside in the heat, then you want to get inside, right? Because shade, controlled temperatures, things like that. Hopefully, you have air conditioning or a swamp cooler. But if not, you do exactly what you did. You mimic sweating, and that causes cooling. And so, moistening the skin, hate that word, but wetting down the skin and getting a fan. And so what happens with that is the body now says, hey, we're not so hot. We can handle this. We can bring more blood back into the core because the skin is getting cooled. We don't have to do that now. And so then your brain, heart, kidneys are getting what is left in your reservoir, right? Um, because you're mimicking the fact that you're not in danger anymore. And that way, you feel better, you can hydrate, and your temperature is no longer rising, and your core system is getting the reservoir that it needs. So you did exactly the right thing, and that's what I would recommend to anybody who works outside.
Well, I guess teenage me wasn't so dumb. I definitely could stand to learn a lot just like I do now, but that's a good movement then into dehydration and drinking enough water to help your body, because what you just described, that's how your organs, I assume, get dehydrated, is they're pushing to the outer edges, they're going away from your brain, your heart, your lungs, all these very necessary aspects of keeping you alive, and those organs start to take damage from not having
Mhm.
enough blood and circulation going on there. So, when you are dealing with that, the best way is to drink water, I assume. Is that correct?
Drink water. If you are doing a lot of sweating, then you probably need to replace some electrolytes as well. So I feel like everybody has those little salt packets. You don't want to necessarily do salt tablets because that might be a little bit too rough on the system. You really want to concentrate on the free water part of it. But adding a little packet, a couple times a day is not a bad idea. But you want to do like 8 ounces every 15 to 20 minutes, which seems kind of crazy. Like, two of those bottles per hour essentially, but that's what you want to do is like a quart an hour. Because if you think about it, your clothes are soaked, right? That's what's happening when you're out in the humidity, and none of that is evaporating. And also, your engine is revving really high. You're going through a lot of fuel, even if you're just sitting there, which most farmers are not just sitting there. So, just having enough gas in the tank in that reservoir is tough to keep up with. So you really have to push the fluids. So I'd say about a quart an hour. Um, you don't necessarily want to do ice water unless you're feeling perfectly fine. If you are not feeling perfectly fine, you want to do cool to room temperature water because otherwise it can actually upset your stomach and then you vomit and now you're really behind the eight ball, right?
Right,
Because now
because
you've
your
got a
body's so hot on the outside and your stomach recognizes this cold thing on the inside, and your body's all about like regulating things.
yes. You wanna kinda sneak up on your tummy because it's not getting a lot of blood flow either. because all that blood is on the outside. So your stomach doesn't have a lot of blood flow. So putting ice water on that can really be upsetting to the stomach. And you might be a little bit nauseated from your brain not getting what it wants already. And so that combination can lead to barfing. No bueno.
Right, right.
So you want to do, yeah, cool to room temperature water if you're already starting to feel poorly. If you're just doing your regular thing, you're feeling good, you've got your big huge hydro flask or whatever and you want to use ice water, do that thing.
Electrolytes, you said salt tablets. Is salt and electrolyte synonymous, or is there a
Mhm.
specific definition when you say electrolytes? And then also, if you can add a little bit more, what do those do? Why does your body need that?
So, electrolytes, when we think about it when you're drinking, is usually sodium, chloride, and potassium. So, those are the things that every single cell in your body needs to function. And so, all of the little gateway pathways where nutrients and minerals and everything flow through that go through channels that are regulated by sodium, chloride, and potassium. So, salt tablets are typically sodium chloride. Like if you just look at the back of your salt, your big, huge thing with the lady with the umbrella, that's sodium chloride. So you definitely need that to function. You die without it. It's the last thing that leaves our bodies, actually. The little packets that you can put into your water or in Gatorade or Powerade or any of those electrolyte replacements, Pedialyte, same thing, is usually sodium chloride and potassium. So when you sweat or you vomit or you have diarrhea, you lose a lot of sodium chloride and potassium. And so you need to replace those so that your cells can function properly. And your kidneys actually are the ones who are in charge of balancing um, the levels of those that are in your blood. If you get too many of them, you just pee them out if your kidneys are working properly.
Right.
If you are in the middle of having a heat injury, then your kidneys are not getting the blood flow that they want. They're not functioning properly. And so they're not regulating your sodium, chloride, and potassium. So it's up to you to put water back in the system to fill the reservoir so that your kidneys are getting what they need to function. And you can give them some electrolytes, and that way they've got something to process properly.
When you are dealing with humidity, being outside in the hot, you are probably not having enough water. And so, how do you get yourself to remember to drink enough water? And what type of breaks are you looking at when trying to prevent heat illness?
Yeah, I would say one of the best things you can do is also have a spotter with water and providing cool water to people. And that way, having like conversation with people, you're going to be able to notice if somebody is sluggish, if they're not thinking straight, if they're kind of slurry, things like that. So if somebody feels off, they need to just stop work, get all their extra clothes off, cool off with water and that fan you're talking about, and take small sips of water and be talking to somebody throughout the process, like every 10 or 15 minutes. You don't just put somebody, sitting down on the side of a building with a bottle of water and walk away because they might get worse and then they're not going to be able to help themselves. But in the meantime, like just for going along with your day, you need to schedule regular breaks and have those people interact with each other, get in the shade, get in the air conditioning. And the people at the largest risk are the ones who are unacclimatized to what is happening. So maybe they don't live in the Midwest. Maybe they're desert rats like myself and they are not used to the humidity. We're the ones who are going to be in the most danger. If you grew up in Iowa and the surrounding areas and you've lived there your whole life, you're more acclimated to deal with heat injury than we are. Like, I'm a mountain goat. I can hang out up in the dry altitude. If you come up here with me and we go for a walk, you're going to be sucking air and you're probably going to vomit and get a headache. So, acclimatization is a big deal because your physiology is just used to certain things. Um,
And also,
so, at the
probably, I'm
start of
guessing it can affect you if you are in air conditioning for a few hours and then go out into the humidity. You shouldn't just immediately start doing something because your body hasn't acclimated at that point either.
Well, I mean, if you are used to the out of doors and you were just out there a little bit too long, or you did an activity that was a lot more vigorous than you were used to and you started feeling funky and so you moved inside to get better, then you're still the same physiology when you go back outside. Um, so because you haven't necessarily caused a heat injury at that time, you were just feeling overwhelmed and too hot and ugh. But yeah, if you are like heavily pouring sweat, headachy, dizzy, nauseated, feeling irpy, um, then your physiology is off. Your organs are not functioning the way they are supposed to. So you want to kind of sneak up on that. I totally agree with you. Um, but yeah, the plan for a regular work day would be check the humidity and the temperature so you kind of know what you're dealing with. Make sure to have plenty of that water with you. I mean, there's just like so many jugs and vessels and all that kind of stuff to keep with you so that you can drink really, really regularly. You want to, use your phone, set an alarm, like set that thing for every 20 minutes or something, and then make sure that you're drinking 6 to 8 ounces. Um, and then, every hour or so, you want to be like, "Hey, buddy, what's going on? How you doing?" Like everybody check in, make sure that they've got water, make sure their speech is normal, that they are looking and feeling well. Because the if you catch it early, it's simple, right? Get inside, get that fan going, wash yourself down, start some electrolytes, get hydrated, give yourself an hour or two, and then you may even be able to go back at it if you're feeling well. Although usually that's the end of your day and you need to just rest up. But if you let it go and you're into the heat stroke action, oh great, now we're in an ambulance and going to the ER and probably spending the night or two. That doesn't feel good.
One last question, then I want to ask some information of any other resources you have. And this might be a simple question, but a lot of people don't like drinking water. They don't like the taste, they don't like the sensation, whatever it is. I like drinking water, but I chug water. I don't just sip on it all day. I will go and just down 8 ounces just like that. Is there a issue with any of that? And do you have a recommendation for people who just don't like drinking water?
My mom is one of those people who does not like water. And
My
it's funny
sister,
because
yeah.
she will eat anything. The only thing that I have found that that woman does not like to eat is or drink is kombucha. And which is funny because she really likes vinegary things, but she doesn't like kombucha. I don't know. It's very weird. But she does not like water. I cannot get her to drink water. And so she will make a lot of iced tea or tea. That's kind of her hydration of choice, which is fine. You have to watch the caffeine content a little bit because that does cause some vasoconstriction to your kidneys. So that's not optimal if you're going to be out and in a dehydrating situation. Um, but tea is a great thing. They have like a bazillion little drops where you can flavor your water. Usually those are just sugar or stevia or nothing. So you just kind of want to watch what the ingredients are for that. Um, my favorite things are liquid IV and LMNT. It's LMNT element because those have very little sugar added to them and they're mostly just the salts. But it is an acquired taste. And if you don't mix it up, you might get a chunk of salt and it's like, ooh. Um, but those are better than Pedialyte is actually one of the best things that you can drink. Very little sugar. And it basically mimics exactly what your plasma wants, but it tastes terrible. And that's why you really only give it to children. 'Cause they don't care yet. But as adults, we don't do super great with Pedialyte flavors. So those are some of the things that you could keep on hand in case somebody is feeling really sick and you're trying to get them hydrated and cooled off. But I think just like regular, you can get the element packets or the liquid IV and put it into one of the things that you're drinking, and then maybe try to augment with water if it's not too icky for you. But usually people have figured out their workarounds. How do I hydrate without tasting water if I don't like it? I love water, so I'm totally fine with that. Um,
Me too. I don't mind
yeah,
drinking it. The
no, me
chugging thing
neither.
though, is that okay? Can you chug? Can you sip? Does your body's getting water all the same?
As long as you're feeling okay and your kidneys function like normal, yeah, I think that's fine. 8 ounces, not a huge deal. I'm talking people who will do like an entire quart or two or three of those things, um, because then it just sits in your stomach and your kidneys just get this big glut. And so if you're not feeling irpy from
Mm,
filling your stomach like that, then your kidneys get this big like splash, and they're like, nope, get rid of it. So instead of keeping it in your reservoir, you end up just peeing it out anyways. So
okay.
8 ounces, totally fine. But if you're talking, 16 to 24 ounces, you're not really helping your physiology all that well. Again,
Okay.
you don't want to do this. You don't want to spike up and down. You just want to raise it and kind of keep it there so that you can get this really nice distribution all over your organs and your cells.
Last note then, Wellness Wednesday, Landis is working to keep farmers safe and healthy out there. That's partly why we're talking about this right now. So, what are some resources folks can look at if they're interested in learning more about heat illness, ways to prevent it, ways to help on the farm?
You can always come to me. I am happy to help. drcarryffs.com. We also have a hydration specialist on the team, Kara. I believe she's in Australia, but she is happy to help us. Um, yeah, Dr. Harris, Dara, she's got all sorts of resources. Oh my God, ChatGPT is probably all over it because it's super basic science stuff. So I would actually trust what that thing has to say. Um, and yeah, I think just making sure that you understand that you need to be gentle on your system because you are working the heck out of that thing. What you do is really hard. You're putting out a lot of calories, you're going through a lot of fluids. So make sure that you are getting a lot of shade, wearing a lot of very loose, flowy clothing so that you get as much air as you can, but you're protecting yourself from the sun. You're retaining some of that evaporative cooling mechanism. If you can get a little fan in your truck, in your tractor, anything like that, those little things go a very long way to avoiding heat injury and heat illness.
Dr. Cari Croghan is the medical consultant for Landus, joining us on Wellness Wednesday. Dr. Cari, you reminded me as well, you also have a podcast. Could you tell me the name of that again, please?
It's FFS at Dr. C. It
Uh,
stands for F's sake.
Dr. Cari, thank you so much for joining us on Farm Here Daily.
Such my pleasure. I'm so glad to help you guys. Looking forward to the next one.
This is Farm Your Daily, a field forward podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Again, in order to continue to produce this type of local content, we would love to have you join our community. So please follow the podcast as well as our social media channels at Field Forward Pod. You can also find me on social media at Geiger Reports. Again, I am your host, David Geiger, and I'll be back again tomorrow, everybody.